We pick a movie we love, we crack it open, and we dig into the juicy stuff that makes it tick. Today, we're strapping on our helmets and jetting off to the Red Planet with the one and only Total Recall.
Arnold.
Yeah, big Arnie. But hold on tight, because we're going deep into some pretty heavy stuff today. We're talking about memory manipulation, we're talking corporate power running amok, and oh yeah, those mutants battling for their lives on Mars. You say we get this deep dive started.
Let's do it. Buckle up.
So right off the bat, one of the things that hits you about Total Recall, even though it came out way back in 1990, is how much it still resonates today. I mean, think about it. We're living in a time when technology is evolving so fast, and the questions that this movie asks about memory, about who we are, about who's pulling the strings, they all feel super relevant, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what makes it such a great science fiction film, right? The ability to tap into these timeless human anxieties and fears and, dress them up in this really engaging, entertaining package.
Right. Exactly. It's not just a mindless action flick, is it?
No.
Total Recall actually makes you stop and think.
Right.
It's like, what if this technology was real? And then you're like, whoa, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second. That whole idea of recall. That company that implants those artificial memories.
Oh, yeah. Recall. It's brilliant, right? On the one hand, it's like this ultimate wish fulfillment. You can have a memory of doing anything you want. Skydiving, exploring the Amazon, meeting your favorite celebrity, you name it.
Right. But on the other hand, and this is where it gets creepy, what happens to the value of real experience? What happens to our motivation to actually get off the couch and do things if we can just buy a memory of it?
That's a great question. I mean, it really makes you think about what defines a genuine experience. Is it about the physical sensations, the emotions, the actual doing, or is it all just about the memory that we're left with?
Right. And then there's the whole potential for abuse, isn't there? I mean, imagine if someone could implant false memories in you. Or erase memories they don't want you to have. The implications for the justice system, for relationships, for history itself, it's mind-blowing.
It's terrifying. And the film really explores that dark side. Remember, in Total Recall, recall isn't just about giving people fun experiences.
No.
It's about control. The corporation that runs Mars, they use memory implants to manipulate people, to keep them in line, and to maintain their grip on power.
Which brings us to the mutants, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who are living on the margins, the ones who've seen through the facade, and they're fighting back against this oppressive system. And they're not just fighting for their own survival, are they?
Mm-hmm.
They're fighting for something much bigger.
Absolutely. Their struggle is about reclaiming their agency, their right to define their own reality, their own identities. They challenge the very foundations of this corporate-controlled society. And, their existence, the fact that they're mutants, raises another whole set of questions about genetic engineering, about what's considered normal or desirable in a future where we can potentially, design human beings.
Exactly. And that's where the film gets even more interesting. Because it forces us to confront these ethical dilemmas. Mm-hmm. It makes us think about the consequences of our technological advancements. And it reminds us that progress isn't always a good thing, especially when it's driven by greed and the pursuit of power.
It's a cautionary tale, but it's also a thrilling ride.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think that's part of the reason why Total Recall continues to fascinate us. It's this really smart, thought-provoking film, but it's also a lot of fun to watch.
Okay. So we've got incredible technology. We've got a corporation that's clearly up to no good. Yeah. We've got these rebels fighting for their lives. But Total Recall throws us another curveball, doesn't it? It asks us, what if none of it is real? What if Quaid's entire Martian adventure is just a big, fat memory implant gone haywire?
Right. And that's where the film really messes with our heads. It plays with our perception of reality, making us question not just what's happening to Quaid, but what we're seeing as an audience.
It's like, okay, is he a secret agent who's had his memory erased? Or is he just some ordinary guy who's gotten way too caught up in his fantasy? We don't really know for sure.
No, we don't. And I think that ambiguity is part of what makes the film so brilliant. It leaves us with this lingering sense of unease, this idea that reality might not be as solid as we think it is.
And maybe, just maybe, we're all living in some kind of simulation.
Or maybe not.
Who knows?
Right.
We'll have to keep digging to find out.
So we're back and still trying to figure out if any of this is even happening or if Quaid's just lost in this fake world, right?
Yeah, that ending, man, It really spins your head around. It makes you question everything you thought was going on. Yeah. Like, is anything even real at this point? But here's the thing. Even if it's all just a simulation, Quaid feels it all right. His emotions, the struggle, it all feels real to him. So I guess the question is, does it matter if it actually happened, in the real world, if it felt real to him?
Right. And that's where Total Recall really dives into some deep stuff about, like, what is reality even? What makes a real experience, right? Is it what's actually happening out there in the world, or is it how we experience it inside our own heads?
It's like when you have a really intense dream, and in the moment it feels so real. You might even wake up and still feel how you felt in the dream. So, in a way, does it even matter if it actually happened out there, if it really affected you?
It's a tough one. The film doesn't really give us any easy answers. And I think that's part of why it's so good, you know, and makes you think about all those assumptions we have about reality, about how we know what's real. And maybe what we see and believe isn't the whole story, right?
It's kind of like that thing Plato talked about with the cave.
Right. Oh, yeah. The allegory of the cave.
Where those people are chained up and they can only see shadows on the wall, and they think that's the real world. But it's just like a distorted version of what's really out there.
Exactly. Total Recall makes you wonder if we're all kind of like those prisoners, you know, stuck in our own little caves, limited by what we can see and believe. What if there's a whole other layer of reality that we don't even know about?
Mind-blowing, right? Okay, so maybe we can't ever know for sure what's real and what's not in the movie. But one thing we do know is that the corporation running Mars, they are definitely the bad guys, right? I mean, exploiting the planet, treating the workers like dirt, messing with everyone's minds with those memory implants. It's like a textbook case of what happens when corporations get too much power.
For sure. It's like a warning, right? About what happens when you let companies prioritize profit over everything else, you know, even people's lives and well-being.
And the mutants, they're the ones who end up paying the price for all that corporate greed, right? They're the ones who are sick from the radiation, living in those awful conditions. And no one cares about their rights or anything. It just shows you what happens when you have all that power concentrated at the top and no one to hold them accountable.
Exactly. Their whole struggle is this powerful symbol of what it means to resist being controlled, you know? They refuse to just accept their fate, and they're willing to risk everything to fight for something better. It's a good reminder that even when things seem really weak, there are always people who will stand up and do what's right.
And then there's Quaid, right? Whether he's a real revolutionary or just a pawn in someone else's game, he ends up becoming this symbol of change. He wakes everyone up, gets the mutants fired up, and leads them in this big rebellion.
I love that his whole journey, even if it's just a fake memory, it shows you the power of like one person taking action, right? Even in a world where it feels like everything's rigged and you don't have any control, you can still choose to fight for what you believe in and make a difference.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been unpacking the crazy world of Total Recall, and now we're in the final stretch. We've talked about memory implants, corporate conspiracies, and mutant revolutions, but there's another layer to this film that makes it so awesome.
You're right. It's not just about the ideas, right? Total Recall actually brings all this stuff to life with some really striking visuals.
Yeah, totally.
Think about those Martian landscapes, how they design the mutants, even just the technology itself. It's also futuristic, but it also has this grimy, lived-in feel to it.
It's not like those super clean utopian futures you see in some sci-fi movies. It's gritty, kind of dangerous, and that just adds to that whole sense of unease and paranoia that runs through the whole film.
Absolutely. It's like you're right there on Mars, sweating it out with Quaid and the mutants, trying to survive.
And the special effects, even though they might look a little dated now, they were so groundbreaking for their time. The way they showed the body horror, the transformations, the violence, it was also in your face and impactful.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, remember that scene where Quaid pulls the tracking device out of his nose?
Oh, God, don't even remind me.
I still get nightmares about that.
Total nightmare feel.
Yeah.
But it's those kinds of disturbing visuals that really stay with you, right?
Yeah.
They make you feel like you can't quite trust what you're seeing, which, of course, brings us back to that whole question of what's real and what's not.
Exactly. Total Recall uses those visuals to blur the lines between reality and fantasy. It keeps you guessing right up until the credits roll, and that's one of the things that makes it so much fun to watch again and again. You always catch something new, some new layer of meaning.
And even though it came out over 30 years ago, Total Recall still feels so relevant today, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, look around. Technology's changing everything so fast.
Yeah.
All those questions the film asks about memory, identity, who's in control, they feel more important than ever.
Totally. Think about all this stuff that's happening right now. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence getting more and more sophisticated, all the information overload we're dealing with every day. Total Recall was almost like prophetic in how it saw these anxieties about technology and how it could change our lives coming.
Right. And it's a film that really makes you think, It challenges you to question what you believe about the world, about yourself, about what's real.
For sure.
And honestly, that's what makes great science fiction, isn't it?
It is.
It's thought-provoking. It challenges you. It sparks those debates.
Exactly.
And Total Recall does all of that. And it's a super exciting, action-packed adventure at the same time.
It's a pretty rare combo, and I think that's why it's become such a classic.
Absolutely. It's why we're still talking about it all these years later. So if you haven't seen Total Recall in a while, or even if you have, I think it's worth another watch. Really pay attention to all the details, the visuals, what the characters are saying, and most importantly, ask yourself those big questions that the film asks about reality, who we are, and how technology might be changing all that. Those questions are more relevant now than ever before.